The first call, a jagged shard of raw panic, violated the pre-dawn stillness of Dr. Althea Washington's secure state radio. It crackled to life shortly after the cold gray light of a crisp November morning had begun to bleed across the eastern sky. Althea, chief of the State Office of Medical Safety and Compliance, was already a sentinel at her desk, a fortress of calm amidst the usual early morning flurry of data and demands, meticulously reviewing critical incident reports from the overnight shift across the sprawling state network. The voice on the other end, thin, reedy, and strained to the breaking point, belonged to a nurse, Maria Rodriguez, she would soon learn, from Patriots Haven, a sprawling, state-supported assisted living community, a sanctuary dedicated to the complex, often challenging care of disabled and elderly veterans. Dr. Washington, thank God I reached you directly. We have, oh God, doctor, it's a catastrophic failure. Multiple critical life support systems on the entire third floor. Ventilators, oxygen concentrators, dialysis assist units, even the central emergency call system, they all went down. All at once, we have veterans in acute distress. Some are coding as I speak. It looks like, dear God, it looks like deliberate sabotage. Doctor, the main power conduits, they're cut clean through. Althea's blood, usually tempered to a cool efficiency by years of navigating critical care emergencies, ran ice cold. Patriots Haven, not just a facility, but one of their flagship institutions renowned for its exceptional compassionate care, a place she personally admired, a testament to a societal promise. Deliberate sabotage of life support equipment, specifically targeting the most vulnerable, the most dependent. It was an act of such profound, calculated malice. It was almost incomprehensible, a darkness she rarely encountered, even in her line of work. I'm on my way. She stated, her voice, a carefully controlled instrument of calm, a deliberate counterpoint to the sudden, violent surge of adrenaline that tightened her chest and quickened her pulse. Nurse, what's your name, please? Rodriguez, doctor. Maria Rodriguez. I'm the charge nurse on third. Nurse Rodriguez, listen to me very carefully. Your immediate priority is manual life support. Initiate full manual backup protocols now. Every available hand. Alert local EMS immediately. Tell them to prepare for potential mass casualty transport and to bring every portable ventilator, ambu bag, and oxygen tank they can load. This is a level 1 critical incident. Secure the affected floor. Treat it as a potential crime scene. No one in or out without my direct authorization or that of sworn law enforcement once they arrive. What's the current patient count on the third floor? 22 veterans, doctor, all with critical life-sustaining dependencies, all of them. Sound, 22 lives. Men and women who had already sacrificed so much for their country, now hanging by the thinnest, most fragile of threads, their existence tethered to machines that had just been brutally silenced. Althea was already moving her body, responding with the ingrained efficiency of long practice, shrugging into her official emergency response jacket, her comprehensive emergency kit, always packed, always ready, already in her hand. Her mind, a finely tuned analytical engine, was racing, sifting through possibilities, prioritizing actions, discarding improbable scenarios, reluctantly homing in on the chillingly plausible. This wasn't just a catastrophic equipment malfunction, not with cleanly cut conduits. This was a targeted, sophisticated, and malevolent attack. She forced herself to sideline immediate speculation about perpetrators. The priority was lives, yet a cold sliver of unease and name tried to surface. She pushed it down. Evidence first, always. Dr. Althea Washington was a force of nature, a formidable presence in the often staid, bureaucratic labyrinth of medical regulation and compliance. A former trauma surgeon who had later pivoted to critical care medicine, she possessed a steely pragmatism, a clinical detachment forged in the brutal crucible of ERs and ICUs where life and death were hourly, sometimes minutely negotiated. A subsequent law degree pursued with the same relentless consuming dedication she brought to medicine had armed her with a different, equally potent set of tools to fight different kinds of battles against systemic negligence, corporate malfeasance, and the insidious tendrils of individual cruelty within the vast, complex healthcare system. Her transition to public service hadn't been a retreat from the front lines, but an expansion of her battlefield. As chief of the State Office of Medical Safety and Compliance, She wielded broad, often daunting powers to investigate, regulate, and enforce standards for all medical facilities, equipment providers, and healthcare practitioners in the state. She was renowned, and in some quarters feared, for her razor-sharp intellect, her almost unnerving attention to detail, and an unshakable composure that could quell rising panic or intimidate determined aggressors with equal measured efficacy. Patriots Haven was more than just another facility on her statewide roster. It was a place she held in high personal regard, a tangible embodiment of the state's solemn commitment to honoring its veterans, a commitment she herself fiercely, personally upheld. The veterans residing on the third floor of Patriots Haven were among the facility's most medically fragile, their bodies bearing the harsh inscriptions of servicemen and women who had served their country with unwavering honor through multiple wars and unforgiving conflicts, now battling a constellation of debilitating illnesses, catastrophic combat injuries, and the inevitable unyielding erosions of time. All required constant, complex, and utterly reliable medical support. Master Gunnery Sergeant Frank Davis, retired, was a cornerstone of this community. 78, a Marine through and through, his gruff, outwardly formidable demeanor concealed a deep well of kindness and a fiercely protective instinct for his fellow residents. He'd lost both legs to a hidden IED in the jungles of Vietnam decades ago, a trauma that had never quite relinquished its grip. More recently, progressive pulmonary fibrosis. A cruel legacy of wartime exposures meant he relied entirely on a ventilator to breathe through the long, often restless nights, and a high-flow oxygen concentrator to sustain him during the day. His spirit, however, remained stubbornly, magnificently undimmed. His room, adorned with commendations and photographs of comrades lost, was a frequent gathering place, his sharp, dry wit and uncomplaining resilience a source of quiet inspiration. He and the 21 others like him on that floor depended with an absolute, terrifying totality on the flawless, uninterrupted integrity of their medical equipment. Their lives were quite literally plugged into the wall. The access road to Patriots Haven, shared with the opulent gated community of Serenity Lakes Estates, was already flashing with the emergency lights of first responders as Althea's unmarked state vehicle siren wailing arrived. She noted with a grim tightening of her lips the decorative stone planters and aggressively high-speed bumps. Karen Shaw, the infamous HOA president of Serenity Lakes, had controversially installed months earlier obstructions Althea's office had fought to have removed, citing unacceptable delays to emergency vehicle access. Some compromises had been forced, but the remnants of Shaw's obstructive efforts still subtly slowed their approach. Shaw, the name unbidden, resurfaced. Her relentless, vindictive campaign against Patriots Haven, a litany of complaints about everything from the unsightly appearance of medical equipment on balconies to the disturbing sounds of oxygen concentrators, had consumed an inordinate amount of Althea's office's time. The complaints were always couched in the carefully sanitized, legally vetted language of community standards and property values. But the underlying prejudice, the visceral disdain for the visible realities of age, illness, and disability was a stench that no amount of perfumed prose or legalistic jargon could entirely conceal. The scene that greeted Althea on the third floor of Patriots Haven was one of controlled, almost surreal chaos, a desperate, heroic ballet of human effort performing triage against a backdrop of terrifying, unnatural technological silence. Ventilators silent, monitors dark, nurses' aides and hastily summoned off-duty staff, their faces pale masks of strain and grim determination, rushed between rooms. They were manually bagging veterans whose ventilators had failed their rhythmic compressions of the ambu bags, a stark physical counterpoint to the electronic stillness of the inert machines. We can't keep this up much longer. Nurse Rodriguez gasped as Althea approached her usually immaculate uniform, already stained. Frank, Gunny Davis, he's slipping away. IV drips were being adjusted by eye medications drawn up by the stark beams of flashlights, vital signs assessed by touch and strained urgent listening. The usual reassuring symphony of beeps, hums, and hisses from the array of life support equipment was chillingly absent, replaced by an eerie, suffocating quiet, punctuated only by the harsh, ragged sound of labored breathing, the frantic rustle of emergency supplies, anxious hushed whispers, and the occasional heartbreaking whimper of distress from a confused, oxygen-starved, frightened resident. Althea found local paramedics, their faces grim, already swarming the scene, their movements efficient and urgent, working shoulder to shoulder with the facility's overwhelmed but valiantly struggling staff to stabilize the most critical patients. Her own state medical safety and compliance rapid response team, a hand-picked unit of forensic engineers, biomedical technicians, and critical care nurse investigators, all experts in medical equipment, failure analysis, and emergency protocols, deployed immediately upon arrival. They fanned out with practiced precision their primary objective to assess the full extent of the damage and begin the desperate, almost hopeless attempt to restore power to any essential systems, even locally room by room if necessary. Status report, Nurse Rodriguez. Full and fast. Althea demanded, her voice cutting through the ambient tension, finding Maria Sanchez somehow coordinating the chaotic efforts with a remarkable, almost preternatural composure amidst the surrounding maelstrom, a small island of calm in a sea of crisis. It's the central power conduits and the primary backup generators for this entire wing. Dr. Washington. Nurse Sanchez reported, her voice tight but steady, her eyes, though shadowed with exhaustion and horror, reflecting an unwavering, steely resolve. They've been deliberately, systematically, and professionally severed. The main heavy-gauge power cables in the locked utility junction box are cut clean through like someone used hydraulic shears. The backup generator fuel lines have been expertly crimped shut and then completely drained of diesel. And look at this. She led Althea to a nearby bank of localized circuit breakers for individual patient rooms. Multiple breakers for individual life support units, ventilators, dialysis machines, concentrators, have also been manually tripped, and then some monster glued them meticulously into the off position with some kind of industrial-grade epoxy. This wasn't a cascading failure, Doctor. This wasn't an accident. This was a planned, methodical, targeted takedown of every critical life-sustaining system on this floor. Althea's jaw tightened until it ached. This was sophisticated, premeditated sabotage requiring specific, detailed knowledge of the facility's complex infrastructure and a chilling degree of ruthlessness. Master Gunnery Sergeant Frank Davis, she asked, her voice dropping low, already fearing knowing the answer. His room. Nurse Sanchez's carefully maintained professional composure finally visibly cracked, her eyes already red-rimmed, filled with fresh tears which she angrily, impatiently brushed away. He's critical, Doctor. Extremely critical. His ventilator was one of the first to fail. We've been manually bagging him for... God, it feels like an eternity. Nearly 30 minutes now, maybe more. He's profoundly hypoxic. Sats are in the low 70s, despite our best efforts. We're trying to get him out. Prepare him for emergency transport, but the elevators are down too. Part of the sabotage. They even cut the damn elevator control lines. She choked back a sob. Frank. He squeezed my hand when it started. He knew. He told me once. If those machines ever stop Maria, that's my ticket out. He said it joking, but... A cold, visceral dread, sharp as a shard of ice, gripped Althea. Frank Davis. A man who had stared down enemy fire on multiple continents, survived catastrophic life-altering injuries, endured years of debilitating illness. With quiet, uncomplaining courage, was now fighting for his very life, suffocating because of a malicious, cowardly act of sabotage in the one place on Earth that was supposed to be his sanctuary, his final peaceful haven. This was personal. This was an abomination. Get him out. Now. Althea ordered, her voice steely edged with a cold fury she rarely allowed to surface. Use the emergency stair chair. He's priority one. Prioritize him and every other ventilator-dependent or acutely unstable patient for immediate evacuation to Haven County General. My team will assist with transport logistics, ensure continuity of critical care en route, and liaise directly with the receiving hospital's trauma and ICU teams. And lock this entire floor down harder than Fort Knox. Nobody touches anything else. This is an active, major crime scene. I want my forensic investigators and the State Police Crime Scene Unit to have exclusive access until they clear it. As the painstaking life-or-death evacuation of the 22 critically ill veterans began a slow, agonizing, almost funereal procession down multiple flights of stairs, each descent a race against time. Althea turned her full attention to the rapidly burgeoning crime scene. Her investigators, working in disciplined tandem with the first responding local police detectives, led by a seasoned, seen-it-all veteran cop named Miles Corbin, quickly found irrefutable evidence of forced entry into the secure main utility room that housed the primary power distribution panels and switching gear for the entire third floor. The heavy reinforced steel door had been expertly jimmied, the high-security lock mechanism bypassed with skill, not brute force. The cuts on the thick, heavy-gauge armored electrical cables were clean, precise, almost surgical, clearly made with professional-grade insulated hydraulic cable cutters. The fuel lines for the backup generators had been deliberately punctured and meticulously drained, the diesel fuel carefully siphoned away, not just spilled. This was no random act of vandalism, no impulsive act of rage by an amateur. This was a cold, calculated, and skillfully executed attack designed with chilling precision to cause a catastrophic, simultaneous, and difficult-to-remedy failure of all primary and backup life support systems. Althea felt a familiar knot of cold anger tighten in her gut. Who had access or could gain access to this level of detailed knowledge about our critical infrastructure? She mused aloud, more to herself than to lead Detective Corbin, who was methodically documenting the scene. The schematics for these systems are restricted. We're looking at current and former staff with specialized maintenance access key outside contractors. Corbin began, his voice gravelly. It's a short list for this level of access. Any recent disgruntled employees, anyone with a grudge and the technical skills. Althea pressed her mind, already constructing profiles, searching for motive and opportunity. Nurse Rodriguez, who had just returned after assisting with loading Frank Davis onto a specialized transport gurney, overheard Althea's question. Her face, already pale, seemed to whiten further. Gary Pullman, she said, her voice barely a whisper. He was a senior maintenance tech. We had to terminate his employment about 2, maybe 3 weeks ago. Caught him red-handed stealing expensive medical supplies, falsifying overtime records. He didn't take it well. Made some veiled and some not-so-veiled threats about making us pay, about how he knew where all the skeletons were buried in this place. He knew these electrical and generator systems inside and out. He designed some of the upgrades himself a few years back. Find Mr. Gary Pullman, Althea instructed Detective Corbin, her tone clipped decisive. Bring him in for immediate questioning. Treat him as a person of extreme interest. Gently at first, Detective. See what he knows where he was. But don't let him out of your sight. This Gary Pullman was now officially their prime suspect. A convenient, plausible perpetrator with clear motive means an opportunity. Yet something about the sheer, unadulterated malice, the almost theatrical cruelty of gluing the circuit breakers, the specific targeting of the veterans, still nagged at Althea, a discordant, unsettling note in the rapidly emerging symphony of incriminating facts. It felt almost too neat. While a statewide alert and search for Gary Pullman was initiated, one of Althea's sharp-eyed forensic technicians, a young woman named Jen Carter, with an almost supernatural ability to spot minute details, made a potentially significant discovery. Dr. Washington, Detective Corbin, take a look at this. She pointed with a gloved finger to a faint, almost invisible scuff mark on the gray-painted concrete floor near the sabotaged main power panel, and then to a tiny, almost microscopic fleck of something embedded in the tacky, still-curing epoxy adhesive on one of the deliberately glued circuit breakers. This paint fleck, this specific color, it's a very unusual high-end custom automotive or specialty equipment paint, not something you'd typically find in an industrial setting like this. And this scuff mark here, she indicated the floor. It's got a residue, a pattern, consistent with a high-end, possibly European-made athletic or work shoe, definitely not a standard-issue work boot. The sole pattern is distinctive. Details. Althea stored them away. Pullman might have expensive tastes. Or not. The crucial game-changing break, however, when it came, arrived not from a direct forensic link, but from an unexpected, almost overlooked source, a newly installed, discrete, high-resolution security camera. It was strategically positioned by Althea's own directive, part of a recent statewide pilot program to enhance physical security at state-supported vulnerable residential facilities. a program ironically implemented after a previous unrelated and far less severe minor safety infraction involving unauthorized after-hours access at another facility months ago. The downloaded encrypted footage from the pre-dawn hours of that very morning, when finally decrypted and reviewed by Althea and Corbin in a makeshift command post, was chillingly, damningly, yet frustratingly ambiguous at first. It showed a lone figure, sex indeterminate due to bulky, dark, expensive-looking athletic wear, a dark baseball cap pulled low face, entirely obscured by shadow, the deep bill of the cap, and what appeared to be a dark gaiter or face mask. The figure moved with a quiet, fluid, almost predatory grace, a practiced efficiency, expertly, almost contemptuously disabling the sophisticated external lock on the utility room door with what looked like specialized tools slipping inside, and then re-emerging minutes later, carrying a small, dark, nondescript tool bag. Then the figure paused. For a fleeting, horrifying second, they looked up almost directly at the cleverly concealed camera lens, a gesture that could have been a final check for witnesses or something far more sinister. A flicker of what could only be described as cold, contemptuous, almost gleeful triumph in their eyes, though the eyes themselves remained shadowed and unreadable. Then a gloved hand raised a can, and the camera lens was abruptly, completely, and professionally obscured by a quick, targeted burst of what looked like matte black spray paint. "No, clear face, damn it," Corbin muttered, leaning closer to the monitor. "Could be Pullman disguised. The build is about right. Or it could be anyone." Althea rewound the footage, playing it again, and then again, her eyes narrowed in intense concentration. The way the figure moved, the expensive athletic wear, high-end, almost custom-looking, not something a disgruntled, recently fired maintenance tech would likely be sporting for a clandestine act of sabotage. The efficiency of the movements, the confidence. It wasn't Pullman. She felt it in her gut, but she had no proof. Not yet. The fleck of paint Jen Carter had found, the expensive shoe scuff, the black spray paint. The paint Carter found on the breaker. Althea said slowly, "The custom paint, and the black spray paint used on this camera. Run a check cross-reference brands. Is there any overlap, any specialty supplier? And the shoes, get me every high-end athletic and work shoe brand with that sole pattern. Cross-reference with local distributors, known customers. It's a long shot, but..." Then Jen Carter called from the lab, her voice tight with excitement. "Doctor, the fleck of paint from the epoxy. It's a perfect match for a custom color used by a very exclusive European auto manufacturer, but it's also bizarrely the exact same proprietary paint used on a limited edition, very high-end line of Italian gardening tools, specifically their top-of-the-line secateurs and loppers. And the black spray paint used on the camera. It's a specialty brand often used for artistic applications or high-end model finishing. Not your average hardware store stuff. Italian gardening tools, high-end athletic wear, Karen Shaw." The pieces slammed together in Althea's mind with the force of a physical blow. Shaw was a renowned obsessive gardener. Her Serenity Lakes estate, a showpiece of horticultural perfection, frequently featured in glossy lifestyle magazines. She was known for importing rare plants and using only the finest, most expensive tools. And her penchant for high-end bespoke athletic wear was legendary in the affluent circles she moved in. "Get an expedited no-knock warrant for Karen Shaw's immediate arrest." Althea ordered Detective Corbin, her voice now tight with a cold, focused fury she hadn't felt in years. "Charges: multiple counts of attempted murder, aggravated assault on disabled and elderly persons, criminal damage to critical infrastructure. And I want to explore domestic terrorism charges, given the specific targeting of a vulnerable population and the intent to cause mass harm and terror, and get an immediate comprehensive search warrant for her residence, all her vehicles, her outbuildings, everything. I want those specific Italian gardening tools, that tool bag, the clothing, matching what the figure wore in this footage, every can of that specialty black spray paint she owns, and every pair of high-end, dark-soled athletic or gardening shoes in her possession." She paused, her eyes like chips of ice. "And, Detective, when you execute, I want to be there." While the complex warrants were being urgently prepared by the DA's office and signed by an on-call judge, Althea received a grim, heartbreaking update from Haven County General. Master Gunnery Sergeant Frank Davis was alive, but only just a fragile flicker in a gathering storm. He was in a deep, unresponsive coma, suffering from severe, likely irreversible anoxic brain injury due to prolonged oxygen deprivation. His chances of any meaningful recovery were slim to none. Several other veterans were also in critical condition, their already fragile health catastrophically, perhaps permanently compromised. The human cost of this act of pathological hatred, this twisted sense of aesthetic offense, was mounting with every passing agonizing minute, and it was utterly, devastatingly unforgivable. Althea felt a profound personal sense of failure. She should have seen this coming. Shaw's escalating behavior. She should have acted more decisively sooner. The weight of that settled heavily on her. The arrest team, a formidable, heavily armed joint task force of state investigators from Althea's own office and local sheriff's deputies, led by Detective Corbin and with Althea present as a primary witness and expert consultant, descended upon Karen Shaw's opulent, sprawling Serenity Lakes mansion with surgical precision and overwhelming force. They found her in her magnificent glass-walled conservatory, a veritable indoor Eden overlooking her meticulously manicured, award-winning formal gardens, calmly sipping exotic tea and perusing what looked like architectural blueprints for a new, even more elaborate water feature, the very picture of serene, insulated, untouchable affluence. Ms. Karen Shaw. Detective Corbin announced, his voice devoid of any emotion, as he presented the hard-won warrant. You are under arrest for 22 counts of attempted murder, multiple counts of aggravated assault, and numerous other felony charges related to the deliberate and malicious sabotage of critical medical equipment at the Patriots Haven Veterans Facility earlier this morning, resulting in catastrophic harm to its residents. Karen Shaw's reaction was not one of shock or fear or even surprise. It was one of pure, undiluted, cold, haughty, almost bored indignation. This, she declared, her voice rising, becoming shrill, her carefully composed, surgically enhanced face contorting into a mask of utter fury and disbelief, is an absolute, unmitigated outrage, an affront. I am a respected member of this community, a philanthropist, a pillar. I have done nothing wrong. That facility, she spat the word like a vile poison, is a blight, a festering, suppurating sore on the otherwise pristine landscape of our beautiful community. It's a drain on our valuable resources, an undeniable eyesore, a constant, unavoidable, and deeply offensive reminder of ugliness, of decay, of pathetic, unproductive dependence. Then her voice dropped, her eyes, usually cold and assessing, glittered with a disturbing, almost feverish, manic light. Those machines, she hissed, her breath catching, those hideous, humming, beeping machines. They humiliate. They dehumanize. They took my father's dignity piece by piece, day by day, in his own beautiful home, turned our lovely house into a grotesque, stinking, beeping, terrifying hospital ward for years. He hated it. I hated it. The clutter, the ugliness, the sounds, the smells, the sheer, unadulterated indignity of it all. Her voice cracked, a raw, painful sound. Althea saw, for a fleeting second, not just a monster, but a deeply damaged, traumatized individual whose pain had curdled into something monstrous. I was merely abating a public nuisance, protecting our community, our shared aesthetic standards, our very way of life. It's my right, my civic duty, as president of this homeowners association, to protect what is beautiful and orderly and decent in this world from such grotesque, offensive intrusions. Her spontaneous, venomous, almost stream of consciousness tirade a chilling, horrifying articulation of her profoundly warped worldview, her staggering, almost sociopathic lack of empathy, her grotesque sense of entitlement and misplaced grievance was a de facto confession far more damning and revealing than any carefully coached statement. She genuinely, pathologically, seemed to believe that her aesthetic preferences, her unresolved festering personal trauma, grotesquely misapplied to innocent others, and her obsessive desire for a pristine environment somehow justified the attempted mass murder of 22 helpless, vulnerable human beings. The subsequent meticulous search of her home, her numerous outbuildings, and her collection of luxury vehicles yielded a veritable treasure trove of damning, irrefutable forensic evidence. Tucked away in a cedar-lined closet in a seldom-used guest room suite, They found the dark, expensive, high-performance athletic wear and the specific limited edition brand of baseball cap worn by the shadowy saboteur in the security footage. In her meticulously organized, climate-controlled multi-car garage, secured within a locked professional-grade rolling tool chest, a chest that also contained a pristine set of the very exclusive Italian gardening tools, including loppers and secateurs matching the unique paint fleck. They found a brand new, barely used pair of heavy-duty insulated hydraulic cable cutters, a small specialized pry bar, several cans of the matte black specialty spray paint used on the security camera, and tellingly, a pair of high-end, dark-soled Italian athletic gardening hybrid shoes, the soles of which were a perfect forensic match for the scuff mark found in the utility room, and which also bore microscopic traces of the specific utility room floor dust and the unique custom paint fleck embedded deep within a tread. They also discovered, neatly filed in her home office, detailed annotated schematics of Patriots Haven's electrical and backup generator systems. Schematics apparently obtained some years prior from publicly available county planning documents when she had first lodged complaints about the facility's construction. Alongside these were handwritten notes on her distinctive, expensive monogrammed Serenity Lakes stationery, detailing system vulnerabilities, potential access points, and a chillingly precise step-by-step checklist for disabling the equipment, a checklist that mirrored the actual sabotage with terrifying accuracy. The premeditation was meticulous, undeniable, deeply disturbing, and utterly terrifying in its cold, calculated precision. The trial of Karen Shaw became a national media sensation, a grim, riveting spectacle that dominated news cycles for weeks, polarizing public opinion and sparking fierce debates about class privilege and societal responsibility. The prosecution, led by a steely-eyed team from the State Attorney General's office with Dr. Althea Washington and her key investigators providing unwavering, compelling expert support and testimony, meticulously, dispassionately, and devastatingly laid out the overwhelming forensic, circumstantial, and direct evidence of her calculated, cold-blooded, and hate-fueled attack. The packed courtroom watched in stunned silence as the security footage played as forensic experts detailed the irrefutable links between Shaw and the crime scene as Patriots Haven staff. Their voices, choked with emotion, recounted the horror of that morning. Althea herself took the stand calmly and precisely, detailing the cascading medical failures and the devastating human impact. The defense, funded by Shaw's seemingly bottomless personal fortune and led by a team of high-priced, nationally known defense attorneys, attempted a multi-pronged, often contradictory, and ultimately desperate strategy, portraying her as a misunderstood, eccentric, overly zealous community activist with a passionate, if perhaps unusually intense, concern for environmental aesthetics and community harmony. A woman driven to an unfortunate, isolated, and deeply regretted lapse in judgment by the constant, unrelenting provocation of Patriots Haven's unsightly, disruptive, and potentially hazardous presence. They even floated the audacious, deeply offensive argument that her actions were a misguided, if extreme, form of eco-protest, or even a desperate, symbolic cry for help from a woman profoundly traumatized by her beloved father's protracted, undignified illness and death years before. This latter point, attempting to garner sympathy, backfired spectacularly when the prosecution presented evidence of Shaw systematically divesting her father of assets during his illness. The jury, after enduring weeks of complex legal maneuvering, often theatrical courtroom theatrics, and the presentation of overwhelming evidence, and after hearing the harrowing, often tearful, and deeply moving testimony of the Patriots Haven staff, the anguished families of the affected veterans, and Dr. Althea Washington herself, and after viewing repeatedly the chillingly clear security footage of Shaw's clandestine actions and listening to the audio recordings of her subsequent self-damning tirade upon arrest, was not swayed. They deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning a swift, unanimous verdict, guilty on all 22 counts of attempted murder, guilty on all counts of aggravated assault, guilty on all counts of criminal damage to critical infrastructure, and guilty on several lesser, but still serious charges. The courtroom erupted. Shaw remained impassive, a frozen statue of defiance, until the judge formally pronounced the verdicts, at which point a single choked sob escaped her lips. The judge, a woman known for her compassionate but firm adherence to the law in sentencing Karen Shaw to multiple consecutive life terms in state prison without the possibility of parole, effectively a death sentence, delivered a scathing, blistering condemnation of her actions, her motivations, and her character. She called them an act of profound, almost unimaginable inhumanity, a monstrous betrayal of common decency, and a terrifying cautionary example of unchecked privilege, deep-seated malignant prejudice, and unresolved personal trauma allowed to fester and metastasize into a justification for mass violence, all insidiously cynically disguised as civic concern and aesthetic preference. A significant portion of her considerable personal assets, after protracted legal battles by her estate, was seized and by court order allocated to a newly established, independently administered trust fund. This fund was dedicated to the lifelong complex medical care and rehabilitation of the veterans she had so grievously permanently harmed, and to fund mandated sweeping upgrades to medical facility safety, security, and oversight protocols statewide. Master Gunnery Sergeant Frank Davis, after weeks suspended in the deep, silent twilight of a profound coma, and then further agonizing months of grueling, painful, intensive rehabilitation, slowly, miraculously, against all medical odds and predictions, began his long, arduous, uncertain journey back to the world of the living. He would never, ever be the same man. The severe diffuse anoxic brain injury had left him with significant permanent cognitive and physical impairments. His speech, when it returned, was halting, slurred, each word a monumental effort. His memory was fragmented, a shattered mosaic of past and present. His once indomitable physical strength was irrevocably diminished, confining him largely to a specialized wheelchair. But his spirit, that unyielding, stubborn, magnificent Marine Corps resilience, though battered, bruised, and deeply scarred, somehow astonishingly remained. He became a powerful, if often silent, and sorrowful symbol of survival. His very presence in the now heavily secured, extensively renovated, and hypervigilant Patriots Haven, a constant, living, breathing reminder of what had been so viciously, so senselessly attacked, and what had, through sheer grit, unwavering courage, and extraordinary medical commitment, endured. Several other veterans also suffered debilitating, life-altering, long-term health consequences, their lives and the lives of their loving, devastated families, forever impacted, forever shadowed by Karen Shaw's calculated, despicable act of hatred. Dr. Althea Washington, in the aftermath of the Patriots Haven tragedy, a case that would indelibly mark her professionally and haunt her personally for the rest of her days, a case that fueled her already fierce determination with a new, colder fire, spearheaded a sweeping top-to-bottom legislative and regulatory overhaul. She relentlessly pushed for new laws and protocols pertaining to the safety and security of all medical equipment and critical infrastructure in residential long-term care and all other healthcare facilities across the state. Frank's Law, as the comprehensive, hard-fought legislative package was colloquially then officially and unanimously named by the state legislature, was signed into law by the governor in a solemn ceremony held on the grounds of Patriots Haven. Althea stood beside the governor with Frank Davis, frail but resolute in his wheelchair, holding her hand. The law mandated enhanced, multi-layered, and regularly tested physical and cybersecurity requirements for all critical medical infrastructure, including primary and backup power systems, medical gas supplies, patient data networks, and access control systems. Regular, unannounced, and rigorous independent state audits of all facility equipment, maintenance logs, staff training records, safety protocols, and security preparedness drills, with zero tolerance for deficiencies and immediate escalating penalties for non-compliance. Significantly increased mandatory minimum criminal penalties for tampering with, sabotaging, or otherwise maliciously interfering with essential medical equipment, healthcare operations, or access to medical facilities, with specific enhancements for crimes targeting vulnerable populations. Mandatory comprehensive and ongoing training and certification for all HOA boards, property managers, and community developers in communities adjacent to or impacting healthcare facilities, focusing on the legal rights of patients, the critical importance of unobstructed access and operation for all medical services, disability sensitivity and conflict resolution. A robust, confidential, easily accessible, and heavily publicized statewide whistleblower hotline and online reporting portal managed directly by Althea's office for reporting any concerns about medical safety equipment, integrity, potential malicious interference, or discriminatory practices, with stringent, ironclad legal protections for those who courageously came forward. The reforms were landmark, groundbreaking, setting a new, far more rigorous and compassionate national standard for protecting vulnerable individuals reliant on life-sustaining medical technology. Althea Washington made it a quiet, personal ritual to visit Frank Davis and the other recovering veterans at Patriots Haven regularly, not just as a state official, but as a friend, a witness. The facility itself, though bearing the invisible scars of that terrible day, had become a fortress of enhanced safety and state-of-the-art security. But more importantly, it had become a place of profound community healing, astonishing resilience, and an even fiercer, more tender dedication to care. On one such visit, months after the trial, Frank, his voice still a hoarse, halting whisper, each word a testament to his enduring fight, gripped Althea's hand with a surprising residual strength. His eyes, those old, wise, seen-too-much marine eyes, burned with an unextinguished, unyielding fire. "You saved us, Doc." He managed a faint smile, touching his lips. "They tried to erase us, but we're still here. Now, you keep fighting. Don't let them ever forget." Althea knew with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, a truth both sobering and galvanizing, that laws and regulations, no matter how stringent, how comprehensive, could not entirely eradicate the kind of deep-seated prejudice, irrational fear, and pathological twisted hatred that had motivated Karen Shaw. The fight against such insidious darkness was perpetual, a constant vigilance. But she also knew with an equal, unshakable conviction that a vigilant, compassionate, and resolute society, armed with strong, just laws, unwavering ethical leadership, and an unyielding, fierce commitment to protecting its most vulnerable members, could and absolutely must stand firm against it, always. The terrifying, unnatural, suffocating silence of the sabotaged machines on that cold, bleak November morning had been a deafening, desperate, unignorable call to action. And Althea Washington, alongside countless others inspired by the quiet, indomitable courage of Frank Davis and his fellow veterans, had answered that call with a resounding, enduring commitment to safety, to justice, and to the unwavering, inviolable sanctity of human dignity. The fight, she knew, was far from over. Frank's law would inevitably face legal challenges and pushback from other wealthy, powerful HOAs and vested interests. There would be other battles. But for today, for Frank, for all the Franks, they had won an essential, hard-fought, and righteous victory, and she would keep fighting.